So, functional programming benefits for distributed processing. So, this sounds quite complicated, but it's an area of the spec. It's actually very simple, but it's just you need to have a half decent understanding of functional programming to really appreciate and understand this. So, I'd suggest stopping the video right here. If you haven't already, go through the functional programming video so you have a decent understanding of what functional programming is, because I'm not going to explain all that in this video as well. Okay, so assuming you now know that, functional programming uses expressions that are similar to mathematical equations. We know that functional programming is typically used for mathematically based problems. So, given that there are no variables and all these functions, because functional programming is separated into lots of different functions, all those functions are self contained. So, that means given a specific set of inputs, the function will always produce the same set of outputs. So each function itself is self-contained. You might have to process certain ones in certain orders and things like that to produce the set result, but if you take each one with the set inputs, they'll always produce set outputs, so therefore they're self-contained. They're not relying on variables that are outside the function, things like that. So we must also remember that functional programs, functions can be passed or returned from other functions. So it's known as a higher order function. So a function can be passed as a parameter or an argument into a function, and the output of a function could also be another function call. But so this has the advantage that because these functions are self-contained, it's a really good language for distributed processing. Because they're self-contained, if you imagine, let's say you've watched distributed processing video, you understand that that's a team of computers working together where one computer is allocated as the master and they will give jobs out to all the other computers. Because functional programming, the functions are self-contained, it's quite easy to distribute different jobs to all the different machines and have them working and then returning to you the results for processing. Okay, now in other programming paradigms, using distributed processing becomes more difficult because it's that thing of how do you allocate what to go where and when, especially if there's like global variables where everything would be different depending on if one thing's already affected that variable, etc. So just trying to understand that functional programming is a really good language for distributed processing and trying to understand why.